Welcome to Staff Management Musts, a important G-Care resident webinar to help you celebrate what you're going to discover is going to be your greatest asset, your team. My name is Amy Morgan. I'm the CEO at Pride Institute and a long-term consultant who has worked in the dental community for longer than I care to mention, but it is my goal to make sure that you as residents are armed and dangerous to be able to take that first step as a professional and be incredibly successful, whether you're an associate who needs to depend upon the kindness of the front office team and the assistants to help you get as productive as possible as soon as possible, or you are jumping in for a direct practice purchase or practice startup. You are going to very quickly realize that in order to be successful, your greatest asset is not your clinical skill or results. It will be your orthodontic team. And to just let you know, that includes hiring, that includes compensation, that includes training and benefits, that includes rewards. Now, this is G-Care is a Dentsply sponsored clinical education program. It is Dentsply's goal to make sure that residents feel like they have all of the tools necessary to become successful. And this is just one more step along the way. So let's get started. First and foremost, now as residents, you are probably already working with a few staff. In undergrad or when you were getting your dental degree, that was negligible. You knew that somebody might have been doing the financial arrangements, somebody must have been scheduling the patients, but the real connection to employees begins the day that you leave this program and take your first job as a professional. And it's important to know what truly attracts, motivates, quality employees to the orthodontic practice. You know, I love the quote, if you want to know why your staff is doing what they're doing or not doing what they're not doing, take a look in the mirror, because bad staff members are not just bad because they looked up at the sky one day in third grade and said, someday I want to make an orthodontist miserable. Bad staff members are made. So let's take a look at what truly attracts and motivates the kind of employees that are going to support, promote, and personify your vision, values, and brand strategies. There's a couple of certain basic business principles that are involved here. First and foremost, they're going to need to have a knowledge of, and more importantly, a belief in your practice's philosophy, which is why you do what you do. It's not just, nobody likes the assembly line 7-Eleven job of I'm doing something that doesn't really help people or motivate people, therefore I'm just going to dial it in. There needs to be a vision that is bright enough that they link their energy to it. They also need to have identification of very specific goals, and that can include patient service goals, that can include financial goals, and probably more important than anything else, very clear expectations for staff performance. Many of us make the mistake of hiring for experience and then hope that they're going to know what they need to do, but a staff member to be delegated to needs to have black and white parameters and expectations, knows, as Stephen Covey once said, where the wild animals in the quicksand is, and be acknowledged when they're doing it right, almost right, or not completely wrong. That's essential to motivate employees. They do need a positive environment where teamwork and involvement is encouraged for all and by all. The worst thing you can create is isolated silos. If your clinical team never talks to the front office, then there's a good chance you're going to be having infighting all the time. So positivity is absolutely essential. Consistent demonstration of leadership skills by the orthodontist, and whether you have a great treatment coordinator / office manager, in a small business, the orthodontist can run, but they can't hide. They have to have leadership skills. And the leadership skills is everything from a vision, a visionary, someone who injects the enthusiasm and passion into a future that everybody wants. It's absolutely essential. But wait, there's a little bit more. You ready? Encouragement and support. Okay. They also want continuing education and training for employees so that they can improve. Everybody wants to grow. If I've been working for 5 years in an ortho practice, doing the same old, and never ever being inspired to new skill levels, I'll just start phoning it in, and so continuing education is a key, and not just for licensure, for truly enhancing the service protocols and system strategy of the practice. Obviously, they want a clean and attractive physical environment. There's nothing better when the team is proud of their surroundings, and that's how you begin to create it. So before you hire that first employee, you really need to know what it is that you want, not just in the employee, but what you want from your practice. Is customer service skills going to trump clinical skills and efficiency? Do I care if they are cross-trained? Do I want teamwork? Do I want them to all know that they have roles as practice marketeers? It's important that you are very clear in your expectations of yourself before you go fishing for the very best tasting tuna. And that's all part. So we're going to start with what is it that you want, which means part of that is knowing what your philosophy is. Not just the kinds of orthodontic services you will provide, but the kind or outcomes that you'll provide, but the service and care environment that you deliver within it. You also need to have job descriptions, and many job descriptions that I've seen, if there are job descriptions, are just laundry lists of tasks in no particular order that are looked at once and never looked at again. And we're going to be looking at in just a few minutes what a real job description is supposed to look like. Job expectations. Job description may say that you want the person to answer the phone. The job expectation is how the phone should be answered and what results and outcomes you're looking at. So it's not enough to know I want you to file charts. The expectation is what's the timeliness of it, what are the days, what's the, how many errors is an acceptable range. Those are the expectations that we set. Of course, you also need the more formal employee policy manual. The more flexible, creative, and solid your employee policy manual is, the more your practice will be set to grow through any and all phases. And so these are the things that have to be there before you even consider hiring or training your first employee. So let's start with the job descriptions and job expectations. You're going to use them in hiring the right people. You're also going to use them in training. You're going to set priorities. You're going to decide whether they're mastering a skill or they're doing with supervision. You're going to use it as a reference baseline. So if you're calling up, I don't know if any of you have ever had the experience of calling references and having no idea what to ask them about. And of course, they're not necessarily going to tell you, unless prompted, that although we're saying this is a very nice person who's done great things, they're not going to necessarily tell you that she can't communicate her way out of a paper bag. So it's a great way to use it as a reference baseline. You're also going to use it to set performance standards and goals for acknowledgement and accountability. There's nothing better than a team member marking a skill or task as mastered. And being acknowledged fully for that. Salary reviews, growth conferences, these are the ways we're going to start to use the job description. So on this slide, you're seeing a template for a fill-in-the-blank job description. Now, the template is a one-pager. You are obviously, duties performed is not going to go all on one line. So this is just to begin to help you organize your thoughts. And I think the best way to learn it is a sample. This was an actual job description. It's very lengthy because this was a practice startup, and the orthodontists involved were hiring their first employee that was going to have to do everything but the kitchen sink. So it's a bigger job description, but it's a good way to learn. I want you to notice a couple of things here, because this is a prototype for a job description that will do everything that we've already been talking about. So let's take a look at it. The first thing we're going to notice is, again, you're going to notice that this orthodontic assistant is a part-time position because it's a startup. It would look very differently with a very different role if this was an existing practice. But it always starts with the vision of the practice. And let's take a look at what these doctors are saying that their unique brand identity is going to be. And it says, our goal is to provide patients with top quality, cutting-edge orthodontic care in a comfortable and enjoyable environment. We strive to create the ultimate experience, thereby creating lifelong relationships. We want our office to be a pleasure to visit. We want them to feel at home. And this type of care can only be accomplished by a group of people who work well together and enjoy doing so. Selection of staff will be made using this criteria, and we will always be kept up to date. Now, already we have a prototype and at least a general model as to what kind of staff member would fit into this. Now, we would then follow that overall vision of the practice with the very important expectation of what's the purpose and the outcomes of the position. You know, the purpose and the outcomes of an appointment coordinator is going to be very different than a clinical assistant or treatment coordinator. So let's take a look at generally what we expect the outcomes to be. And we won't go over all of them, but let's take a look. Patients and parents who are raving fans, and they're committed to their course of treatment and they refer. We've got an allied healthcare community that is excited about referring. Patients are seen on time. They're influenced and inspired. They're delivered excellent clinical care. They get the treatment results. They're getting assisting skills that include room turnover and tray prep. They've got excellent operating systems and teamwork. Now, this is a huge job description, and don't try this at home, but at least you get to see how this begins to work. So following that, what are the goals and benchmarks of the system? So if that's the outcome, how are we going to know we're doing it well? Well, people are going to enjoy being here. They're going to be seen on time. They're going to be finished on time. We're going to hit our practice goals. The treatment results are going to be excellent. They're going to be able to delegate. The office is clean. The responsibilities are carried out in a competent and confident manner. And most importantly, there's a fun environment for staff and team, which ties to the vision. Once you've got that, here comes, you ready? You're about to learn how to talk like an MBA, even though you're an orthodontic resident. If you remember nothing else, I want you to remember these three little letters here, KSA. When you are designing a job description, you are designing it based upon the KSA, which is the knowledge, skills, abilities, and attitudes. A actually does double duty here. What's the knowledge, skills, abilities, and attitudes needed to run this job description to achieve the outcomes and goals we've just stated here. So when you are hiring, when you are training, when you are compensating, or whether you are terminating, you're terminating or hiring or compensating based upon either the presence of KSAs or the lack. So let's take a look at some of the KSAs. Computer literate, working knowledge of ortho terminology, reactive to problems, good communication skills. We want English and Spanish here. Self-directed, motor skills, and a team player who can work towards group consensus. Now, you're your own unique snowflake. It's very important that you have your own KSAs designed for the job description that you want. Once you have the job KSAs in place, then and only then can you go to the tasks involved in achieving the outcomes. And we're umbrellaing this, okay? So the first umbrella is the clinical skills. okay, which includes taking necessary x-rays, cleaning and preparing teeth for bonding, doing lab work. This office uses Dolphin as their software program. So we get very specific clinical skills based upon the priorities of the practice. Patient management skills, which includes making patients feel welcome, explaining procedures, monitoring appointment times, so that there's very clear mandates for priorities. We have general and administrative, marketing skills, teamwork, and here's the all-important areas of cross-training, which includes, even though I'm an orthodontic assistant, I'm going to fill in the front. I'm going to review payment plans every now and then. And based upon this very specific job description, you now have a clear mandate on what it is that you are attempting to hire, inspire to better and better performance. Once you've got the job description, then you have the green light to write your first ad. You have to have the job description first because we're going to use it to write the ad. And it's going to sound something like this. It's going to be a brief statement about your location and type of business. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Your type of business is the business philosophy and its brand identity. So it might sound something like this. Downtown professional office, or family orthodontic practice who caters to both teens and adults, whatever it may be. It's brief. What you are looking for, which again is coming directly out of the KSA. So you never ever, by the way, just as a heads up, most of you are going to be working in at-will states. And an at-will employee means that that either the employee or the employer can fire or quit without a moment's notice for no apparent reason at all. The minute you say words like permanent, it's no longer at will. So even if you're in a state, if you promise permanency, you're definitely taking it out of a much more objective method of support and consequences. So never say permanent. That's just a side note. But we are going to write a list of adjectives that pertain to the practice and your vision for the type of person, and that becomes really easy when you already have the job description. So it might say, seeking enthusiastic, detail-oriented treatment coordinator, who has a firm knowledge of orthodontic care or whatever it may be. Skills required for the job. Excellent communication skills, both written and verbal, and preferably familiarity with different practice management softwares, if that's what you're choosing. Although I will always tell you, hire for customer service and train for skill. So skills preferred for the job. Computer experience, hours of the job. Maybe full-time Monday through Friday, okay? Quality statement that reveals something unique and inspiring about your practice. If you are interested in joining a quality, ethical orthodontic team where your participation makes a difference, then call Mary at Dr. John Michael's office. Don't talk about salary. Let them call in. If you're using Craigslist, if you're using Monster.com or any of the local newspapers, either online or on paper, if you're looking for the old Charlie Tuna commercial of the best tasting tuna get to be, star-kissed, you have to have the right tuna net. And the tuna net starts with the ad that you're running. Once you start to either through your phone interview, which is just the general filtering of does this person actually know how to alphabetize, and are they able to get to work on their own two legs? You start to bring them in for the interview process, and the interview process can include various job-related question categories, which can include how the applicant regards their current or past positions. And let me tell you, don't just look for good news. If that employee only says, I've always had only wonderful results and I'm perfect, understand that they are interviewing well, but they may be a whole different ball of wax once they get started. I like to hear people who humbly admit that they are still learning, Questions to probe the applicant's relationship with people. Things like, how would you handle a parent who is angry at their bill, are great questions to ask. Questions that explore aspirations, and that means I know that you're interested in the clinical assistant position, but 5 years from now, what do you hope to be doing? Questions to stimulate self-assessment. If there was an area that you needed support in, what would that be? Questions to determine how the applicant would apply skills and experience. And it's really easy when you're talking about tray prep. It's a little bit more difficult when you're asking them how to handle objections or use a software that they haven't seen before. So some specific questions that are my favorite that help you get some of those answers that you're looking for is things like, what particular aspects of this job do you find most attractive? And guess what? You have to show them the job description to do that. Take me through the key moments in your career up to now. What are you most proud of? These are those aspirational questions. What events, jobs in your current job are most challenging? What's missing from your experience helps them get vulnerable. Describe, look at this one. Describe a work situation that you were not proud of and what did you learn? I really love continuous learners. That's really important. Describe how you've handled rude or difficult or impatient people, and after being with the same employer for so long, do you think it might be difficult to start a new job? These are great ways to begin to hire. You hire the human, you train the staff member, and that becomes incredibly important. Once you've hired, the next step, you've got a job description, you've got the hiring ad. We need an employee policy handbook, and the reason we need a policy is we don't want you to be, I'm going to use the clinic, I won't call you anal, we'll call you subgingival. We don't want subgingival micromanagers in staff management that are so Siegel gotcha-like, swooping down on every little missed detail. But an employee policy manual gives safety because it makes the parameters black and white and huge. Now, a classic employee policy handbook, there's all sorts of templates you can get through AAO, through local software companies. We also have a template as part of our materials. But what you want is to have everything from the acknowledgement and receipt of the handbook and a definition of being an at-will employee, a welcome statement, the philosophy statement, an equal opportunity statement, as well as the practice guidelines and policies, which is everything from OSHA and HIPAA regulations to how you handle patient confidentiality, which is OSHA, substance abuse, lunch and breaks, all of the above, as well as the benefits and perks that you are offering for them. And honestly, the goal of an excellent black and white wide berth employee manual is no surprises. So, how are you going to handle CE? How do you expect them to come in on off days for staff meetings? Are you going to pay them for it? So you want to be as clear and as wide as you possibly can. An example of some of the pieces that we're talking about is, let's see, actually, let me go backwards here for a second. You might not be able to see this on the screen, but here's the welcome statement. Welcome to our team. We believe that every employee contributes to our practice's success, and we hope that you will take pride in working here. You were hired because we believe that you can contribute. This employee policy handbook contains the key policy, goals, benefits, and expectations of our practice. No employee handbook, however, can anticipate every question, so we will anticipate and do our best to inform employees of changing. You then put in your philosophy, you put in the equal opportunity employment. We have guidelines and policies like respectful communication and punctuality. We have personal appearance, computer and telephone use. Oh, we actually had it here as you start to look at this. Guidelines on communication. And all of a sudden, we have a model that allows us to be able to function and provide the guidance to our staff so they rise to new levels of excellence and they want to do what they want to do. Since we're on the employee policy handbook, when we talk to residents and dental students, we very often get the embezzlement question because it's not unusual for us to go to the dark side here. So a word about embezzlement: there needs to be a trust win-win relationship. You need to trust your team. But part of trusting your team is to create an environment where they are going to be positively moved in a positive direction, and there is no back door. And considering that 1 out of 10 general and specialty dental practices do get embezzled sometime in their career, it is a good thing to know. So what can you do to help support this? First and foremost, no rubber stamps. And what I mean by that is you don't have your signature on a rubber stamp, and because your assistant is doing the ordering, they get to put your signature on it. Okay, that's an obvious. You sign everything. You sign everything, and it does help to have that. You need to break up the duties. So if somebody is preparing the day sheet, somebody else does the takes the money to the bank, or does the closeout duties, so that there is a system of checks and balances. You monitor credit cards, online banking, and budget. Online banking opportunities is the easiest way these days in order to get embezzlement. And you have to be involved. You can't just have your accountant cross-checking. You can't have your spouse cross-checking. This is something that you have to be able to monitor in a very specific way. So now you have a hired employee, and that hired employee is ready to be inspired to do what it is that you want them to do. And we're back to creating that motivational environment. So understand that although motivation is an internal process, nobody can motivate anybody to do anything. Okay? You cannot impose motivation on your team. I insist that you become motivated. The only thing that you can do is create an environment where team members want to do what you want them to do. And that is an art form unto itself. An environment that's conducive to self-motivation is an environment where team members feel their needs are going to be met. Okay? And remember, if you're meeting a team member's environment, it doesn't mean that they have the same needs as you do. As long as those needs can peacefully coexist, that's good enough. A team member might be worried about how they're paying their electric bill, and an orthodontist may be worried about how they're going to fund college education for their 6 kids. It doesn't mean that both needs can't be met. And the most important piece is to remain motivated. A team member needs to know that if they do a good job, they're going to be taken care of. And it doesn't necessarily mean a dangling carrot, do a good job and I'll give you a bonus. Although compensation is a significant factor in creating an environment that lends itself to self-direction, it is not the be-all and end-all. So let's take a few minutes and talk about compensation. First of all, compensation as a package is not just the wage itself. It's not hourly or salary. It's not, are we competitive? It also includes what are known as pay premiums and differentials. That can be something like a profit share, retirement, a one-time only payout, bonuses and incentives. And we're going to talk a little bit about bonus plans in just a second. And bonuses and incentives are the cherry on top. If you haven't given a wage increase in 10 years, no amount of a one-time only bonus is going to make the person feel that their compensation model is out of whack. Benefits and perks. And by perks, it may be that, the staff member's family gets orthodontic care. It may be medical. It may be I get to go to AAO in New Orleans or Hawaii or wherever AAO is going to be and get to have a good time. And honestly, it's also intrinsic reward. It includes, am I valued? Am I appreciated? Is there a sense of inclusion and respect? Am I given opportunities for personal growth and fulfillment? Am I listened to? And it's interesting, all of these factors come under the model of an excellent compensation package. And if one's missing, then the pressure goes on the other bullets to compensate, and it never works. So you have to have all in place to be fully functional. Now, a professional, and you want to hire professionals, will expect a good compensation package, which is salary and benefits. In fact, they might over expect, and that's okay as long as they understand that they need to demonstrate what they think they're worthy of. They're going to want control of future compensation. And what I mean by that, if you compensate by the bellyache, which means a clinical assistant knocks on your door and say, "Doctor, it's salary review time," and you start bargaining with your stomach acid, and you give them a $5 an hour increase, but they don't know how or why they got that increase, and more importantly, what they need to do to merit the next, no amount will ever be enough, because they're going to perceive that increase through a scarcity. They must have control. And they're going to expect salary or benefit increases based on your increased viability and their increased individual demonstrated skills. So if that's the fact, and it is the fact, there are three stone tablet, non-breakable laws of compensation that must be in place for you to be able to have a successful relationship with your team. And no one of these three is more important than the next. These are the stone tablet laws that have to be in place. Number one, your compensation package does need to be competitive with what the market is paying, but you compete with your level of excellence on the same terms. If you've got a friend down the street that has 10-year employees who have been there for a really long time, who have a different educational level and a different skill set, who's offering different benefits than you are, you need to be able to compare apples to apples. Every single position has a broad band potential of wage and benefit, and you got to keep them within that. A brain surgeon is not the same broadband as a janitor, and a clinical assistant's going to have a broadband, a treatment coordinator is going to have a broadband, and thou shalt stay within the broadband. Number two, here's a no-brainer. You have to be able to afford to pay the compensation. So if you hire somebody at $15 an hour and you want to take them to $18 an hour after the first year, that $3 an hour needs to come from some form of a pool based upon increased practice viability, not the owner's pocket. Okay? It's survival of the fittest, and for a staff member to grow, the practice has to grow. And for me, the most important law of all is that the compensation, and the most important word here is based on demonstrated skill and ability, not hope for. Jerry Maguire, show me the money. Our new statement is going to be, show me the skill and I'll show you the money. And that's an important piece as you begin to look at this. When you begin to think about, well, am I supposed to offer medical? Am I supposed to do a retirement? What are my responsibilities? Your benefits packages are as unique as you are, and they can be customized aside from the mandatory benefits, which we're going to show you in just a few minutes. Your benefits package can completely personify you, what your practice philosophy is, and send a very consistent message on what's important in your practice. So you need to think about these three questions when you are designing your benefits packages. Number one, what do you want to say about your practice through the benefits you offer? Are you family oriented? Are you productivity oriented? Are you continuous growth and education oriented? If you're going into an existing practice, does your current benefits package align with the type of employees you want? And more importantly, the type of culture you want to reinforce. And obviously, what are you willing to spend to make those benefits a reality? Those are your first questions. And as you begin to answer those questions, there's certain benefits that communicate security and longevity. Classically, it's medical or dental, retirement and pension, workers' comp. There's benefits that communicate flexibility and creativity, childcare reimbursement, vacation or paid time off, well days, parking, flex time, all, health, health club membership. And then there are benefits that focus on productivity and continuous improvement, everything from school tuition to short-term rewards plans. And again, I want you to understand there's no such thing as the definitive benefits plan. It is as unique and as customized as you choose to be. Now, if you're going into an existing practice that has its own unique benefits plan, you do need to grandfather in. There's nothing worse than a new broom that sweeps clean before you change it to your philosophy, but ultimately, your practice benefits represent you. Now, there are some benefits that are required, and some vary state to state, but the classic benefits that you have to deliver is Social Security. I recently had an office that called me up and is like, do I really have to offer, let that staff member off for jury duty because we're working that day? And I'm like, yeah, you have to. The HIPAA stuff, the FMLA, that's the family leave stuff, COBRA if they leave, and certainly unemployment. These are just classic things that have to be done, and it's always a good idea to check with your local state components to just make sure that your list is as accurate as possible. One of the tools that you're going to be using in order to be able to consistently upgrade and support your employee salary and benefit statements is the tool known as the salary review. And the salary review is more of a marketing opportunity than anything else. It's not necessarily a growth conference where you set goals for growth. It's your opportunity to market what a wonderful person you are and what you give to have the kind of staff that you choose to have. And the salary review process starts with you looking at whatever metric of affordability that you need to, and we use practice collections. In fact, we use the practice collections increase over the prior year. We then go ahead and create a salary pool based upon that increase, and it usually ranges from anywhere from 10 to 20%, which then allows the staff member to get anywhere from a 5 to 15% increase. Those are the normal range percentages. You then review goals that were set in a more coaching and collaborative process known as the growth conference and the job description. You assign a value for that salary pool based on that. You then use the employee's performance to decide what percentage they're going to merit. You complete salary review worksheets, which I'm going to show you in just a second, and you schedule a 30-minute salary review to discuss what it is that the employee did very, very right throughout the year and the focus for improvement in the next year. By the way, if you want a staff member to go postal on you, wait for the salary review to tell them they accomplished nothing. Coaching is a day in, day out supportive kind of a thing, but this is the formal declaration. You then fill out the worksheet, which looks like this. You start with what they're making currently, which not only includes their cash compensation, but their non-cash compensation, which can include paid time off, their staff benefits. You also then project the new compensation. You then take it all the way down to their paid benefits, which includes the additional taxes that you pay, any additional non-cash compensation like rewards, parties, employee orthodontics, so that they can see the sum total of the investment that you've made in them and aspire to make in them in the future, because we all know a $25,000 employee with just traditional taxes and benefits is closer to a $32,000 employee, and it's important that they know too. And so communication is essential. Now, compensation is what you give people for doing the job they were hired to do. If somebody merits $15 an hour, to do the job description that you've created, then that's what compensation is all about. However, recognition, on the other hand, celebrates efforts above and beyond the call of duty. A well-compensated employee still deserves the right to be acknowledged and appreciated when you catch them doing it right, almost right, or not completely wrong. And what I mean by that is attention is like sunshine. And if you acknowledge the rightness within your team members, you tend to get more rightness. If you acknowledge the wrongness, they tend to go down the vortex of blame, shame, and regret. So acknowledgement is essential. Many, many years ago in a past life, I had the wonderful opportunity to be a Disney employee, a Disney cast member. And so I cut my teeth on an organization and a culture that is supposed to be the happiest place in the world. And the way they become the happiest place in the world is by taking, whether you are a hourly, minimum wage employee to the VP of marketing and guest affairs. There is reward and recognition that celebrates the fact that the key to guest service is cast member service. So it is essential, essential, essential that you celebrate them. We also have short attention spans. And when a staff is looking for a once-a-year salary review, when you've had a great day or a great month, or you're sending the team on a new odyssey to assimilate a new clinical skill or marketing initiative, people can either change under fear or challenge, or they can change under excitement and competition and the game. So short-term reward and recognition programs work really well. A lot of the orthodontic bonus and incentive plans are what I consider to be lazy, and pardon the expression, communistic, because the lazy is it's the same plan year after year, month after month, celebrating an effort where the individual doesn't understand what they do to help achieve it, and the superstars get the same thing as the mediocre employees, get the same thing as the poor performers. A lazy bonus plan homogenizes your group and gets you nowhere. So what are the guidelines for reward and recognition? Well, first and foremost, the program should reflect the company's values and business strategies 99.9% of the time. We're seeing bonus plans based on production, case starts, collections maybe. But how about supporting each other from a philosophical point of view, training each other, learning to be cross-trained, being effective billboards for your service as a marketing representative. You need to mix the programs up significantly. Here's an interesting point. Reward and recognition programs work best when the employees are participating in the development, give them a budget and get out of their way, and the execution. If you're like Moses on the mountaintop and you're just rewarding willy-nilly, they're going to take less pride in what you're doing. So there's nothing greater than, team, we're assimilating a new clinical skill. It's going to take us about a quarter. Here's the benchmarks that will say we're doing it well. I've allocated $1,000 towards a reward budget to help us celebrate this, and I want it to be a team gift. What should it be is going to get you much farther. Programs can involve cash, non-cash, or both. Believe it or not, if your staff know how or why they're getting the next salary increase, they'll go a mile for a Krispy Kreme donut or a lottery ticket. So it's not necessarily whether you're giving them diamond tiaras that will get the excitement of the game going. Remember, what is meaningful to you may not be meaningful to someone else, so variety is essential. We had a young orthodontist who purchased an existing practice. The median age of his team members was 55, and he rewarded them with a hike up a mountain, which was wonderful for him, not so wonderful for the team. So this is for the team, not for you. It should be highly public. It should be on Facebook. It should be on website, because part of the gift that keeps on giving is your patients and parents knowing how you're appreciating the team. It should have short lifespans and be changed frequently. If you're purchasing a practice that has had the same bonus and incentive model in for 5 years, I guarantee you that bonus model lost its passion about 4 years ago, and you need to take a look at that. And finally, no jelly bean motivation. And what I mean by that is part of recognizing the group is recognizing the individual. So if you're going to do gift certificates for the holidays, then at least put it in a Christmas card that highlights the person's individual contributions, their KSAs that led to the success for the year, and more importantly, why don't you do different gift cards that represent their different interests? The whole idea of reward and recognition is to say, I recognize you, I value you, I appreciate you, you are an integral part of the team. And when you do that, life gets really great. You know, as I begin to wrap this up, one of my favorite quotes from Bob Nelson, who was the compensation specialist for Disney, he said to a group of dentists and specialists at a Pride training meeting one year is that there is a huge difference between a nice gesture and a motivating moment. And a nice gesture is given for the wonderfulness of the gesture alone, and you can't expect anything from a nice gesture other than maybe a thank you, because if you expect more, then it's a hidden agenda and it loses its nice gesture quality. The motivating moment is a reason for a staff member to continue to behave or take on a new skill into the future. And it's not the price tag. It's the fact you're giving me a reason to behave a certain way that I am inspired to do. So remember, that's what reward and recognition is all about. So to wrap this up, and this comes directly from some of the materials that we've created for staff members. We have a 4-module workbook called Take Pride in What You Pay. The whole thing leads to self-motivation, and self-motivation is giving a person a reason within themselves to behave a certain way. And I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember, but it always reminds me of sea monkeys. And what I mean by that is a lot of us are under the mistaken assumption that self-motivated employees just materialize in your practice. And anybody who ever bought a comic book would know that there was an ad for sea monkeys that looked wonderful. It was a little pink little kingdom of monkey wonderfulness. And when you put them in water, like 5 weeks later, many of us were very disappointed to discover that they were dead brine shrimp. Okay, many of us will hire employees thinking that they're going to be sea monkeys and discover that they're only brine shrimp because we have not created the process of cultivating that self-motivated employee. So to summarize what we're talking about is you design ads that will attract the kind of employees that you really, really, really want. Here's an example. If you want to love coming to work, then join our team of dedicated, enthusiastic professionals. We seek an experienced dental assistant who wants to work in a high-end practice that focuses on personal growth, teamwork, and high-quality dentistry. That's an example of the kind of ad we're looking for. Ask interview questions that will reveal the potential employee's willingness, competence, conscientiousness, their KSAs. So, what inspires you? What makes you angry? How have you influenced patients or teammates in the past? And what are you doing now that you want to do better? Are the classic kinds of questions that will get you what you want. Once they're hired, you communicate expectations in a way that gives them wide berth to learn and master their skills, which includes not what needs to be done, but why, what degree of success, what standards. So things like, so that our patients feel assured, I'd like you to, before you bib them, ask them several questions so that they know that they're being well cared for. Or to get our collection percentage to 98%, our expectation is that patients will be called within 48 hours of a missed payment. Or your role is to make sure that the trays are simply completely set up before each appointment. Here's some pictures of the different tray setup. Now let's go through it one by one. I'll do it first and then I'll ask you to demonstrate. These are classic coaching models to communicate expectations. Develop performance, and you provide feedback, you model, you mentor, you train, you coach through growth conferencing, through salary reviews, through informal and formal feedback sessions. Here's what happens when you do this. How well does this model meet our standards? What do you think should be done next to make your performance even better? You then reinforce through compensation, but don't ever, ever, ever forget the verbal bouquet that goes with the compensation. I noticed that the bite guard you created fit beautifully. Thank you. Or I appreciate that all of you chipped in yesterday. Today lunch is on me. Or this year you exceeded the goals we set for you. I'd like to acknowledge your contribution by offering this wage increase, this raise. This is the multiple forms and multiple opportunities to catch your staff in the act of doing it right or almost right and inspiring them to better performance. The bottom line is that leaders can and must create a self-motivating culture when they hire the right people, train them to self-monitor their efforts, and use compensation to reward and recognize desirable behaviors. Now, you are probably going to have questions on this. I invite all of you to, if you have any questions, because I think staff management is an art form unto itself. Both G-Care, Den Supply, and Pride Institute are here to make sure that you do make a successful transition into professional practice, be it an associate, partnership, practice, purchase, or startup. So if there are questions about staff management or anything else, please visit us on www.prideinstitute.com. Right on the home page, there's an Ask a Consultant button, and we'll get back to you right away, or you can call us at 800-925-2600. I hope this gives you enough information so that as you deal with your first employee, it's something that you're excited about and feel at least educated enough to know that there is a future with this staff member that has everything to with you looking in the mirror and stepping up and inspiring them to want to do what you want them today. Thank you so much for attending.